Now it's my unique privilege to introduce an honorable man who has a background as a public servant, university professor, teacher, and now United States Senator, the Honorable Roy Blunt, who was elected to the United States Senate from Missouri in 2010. Senator Blunt now serves as Vice Chairman of the Senate Republican Conference and is the Chairman of the Appropriations Subcommittee on Labor, Health and Human Services, and Education. He was elected Majority Whip earlier in his career than any member of Congress and was elected to the Senate leadership during the first year as Senator. He previously served as a county official and as Missouri's Secretary of State. I am enlightened to present Senator Roy Blunt, who will offer special remarks in tribute to this evening's esteemed honoree. Welcome, Senator.
Wonderful to be here. Well, thank you, Maria. It's great to be here and great to be here with you. I'm honored to join you, the Inter-American Dialogue. You know, we're changing the Washington dialogue a little bit. We say huge a lot more than we used to, and big league a lot more than we used to. And in fact, this morning, my 12-year-old son was getting ready to go to his school, and I asked him about something, and he said, "Dad, don't worry about this. On this topic, I know more than the generals." I would say also, as we make America great again, you can't be truly great unless you live in a great neighborhood. And we all need to be doing everything we can. We all need to be doing everything we can to be part of a great neighborhood. The honorees I was able to be here to hear introduced and their remarks tonight, I was grateful to be part of that. I missed the opportunity to hear my good friend Elliot Engel and to hear what Dr. Van der Leeden-Moda had to say about her work with Zika. You know, we're a little slow sometimes in the Congress, but we almost always eventually arrive at the right place at the end, and I was able to help put together that Zika package, but the work she had done really demonstrating the likely clinical certainty between Zika and microcephaly was very helpful in arguing about a problem that is almost always not a problem at all, but when it is a problem, it's a big problem. And so thank you, Doctor, for that. It's my special privilege really tonight to be here to introduce tonight's last award recipient, Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos. Before I do, I'd like to share a little bit of my perspective, and Elliot Engel would have the same perspective, I think, as a member of the Congress, looking at what happened in Colombia and looking at President Santos' leadership there. When I was first sworn into the House of Representatives in 1997, Colombia looked very different than it does today, just 20 years later. Just a few years before that, Colombia had witnessed unprecedented growth in the drug trade, involving arguably the worst drug kingpins in the world, who were, in a contradictory way, both incredibly violent and incredibly sophisticated in what they were doing. Colombia's longtime Marxist insurgent force, the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, or the FARC, had really grown into a powerful, effective paramilitary organization that included large areas of control of the country, but also included the drug business, extortion, kidnapping, assassinations, and the linking of the FARC and the drugs was a huge thing to try to overcome. My second term in 1999, Colombia's own defense minister reported that the country had experienced nearly 2,000 terrorist acts, more than 3,000 kidnappings, a homicide rate of 60 per 100,000 people. And in October of that year, I watched on the television as nearly 1 million Colombians marched against the FARC in a no mas nationwide protest. Of course, there was concern here, there was concern there was concern all over the neighborhood we live in of what was going to happen if that process didn't change and if it was allowed to spread. In July of 2000, I voted for and the Congress approved funding for Plan Colombia. It was a comprehensive plan to assist Colombia in the counter-narcotics and counter-insurgency operations. The aid package included signals intelligence support, it included helicopters and increased mobility, it included precision weapons that would minimize other casualties. In 2004, I made my first of what I think President Santos now has been about a half a dozen trips to Colombia. That trip was to look at what Plan Colombia was doing, but also to begin to talk about, as things were changing, what the economic opportunities could be for Colombia and between our two countries. In my sixth term in the Congress in 2008, Colombia had massively expanded the size of the armed forces engaged in the efforts they were pursuing. Local communities were also linked closer to the security forces. This is a story that really goes on in a country and its leadership deciding that the way things were not the way they would continue to be. And a lot of this work was spearheaded by President Santos. He serves as defense minister from 2006 to 2009 in what was arguably some of the most difficult of bringing Colombia to a place that people could see that better things were going to happen. My first year in the Senate was 2011, and that was the year President Santos was elected. After a decade of Plan Colombia, the progress that had been made, things were beginning to happen, but they happened mostly because President Santos, in my opinion, wanted them to happen. In August of 2012, he announced that exploratory talks were underway for a peace agreement with the FARC. I was surprised. I think most people were surprised that not only President Santos was willing to take this on, but in such a short time felt comfortable in announcing what was happening. Over the last few years, the peace process has waxed and it has waned, but it has always moved forward. The bilateral ceasefire signed by the FARC in June of this year was a historic moment, and I'm hopeful that those moments can continue and truly signal a real desire for this to come to an end. The narrow vote in October was, of course, a disappointment, but President Santos has been committed to the understanding that really people have to accept this process before this process can really work. His desire for Colombians to participate in this discussion has been great, and his vision has been great. I'm encouraged, frankly, at how quickly the concerns were immediately addressed after that October vote, and hopefully we are headed now toward another conclusion that will move into the future. I'm especially privileged to be able to introduce tonight's last honoree. He is a man of great courage. He's a man I respect. He's a Nobel Peace Prize winner. There's a blessed are the peacemakers, and the peacemaker here among us tonight that's been most recognized for his efforts is the President of Colombia, Juan Manuel Santos. President Santos.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you so much, Senator. Now it is my distinct privilege to introduce the former president of Mexico, who played a crucial role in his country's history. And a long, long time ago, I interviewed you, and I was pregnant. And my daughter's now at American University. It's been that long. Interesting. And now she's here at American University studying, and it's been a long time, Mr. President. As we know, he really doesn't need any introduction because he's someone that is very, very, very special. And now he's dedicating himself to educating students and sending a positive message of Mexico and of Latinos in the US to the whole world. And tonight he's here to introduce someone that is very special and who gets one more of many awards that he very much deserves. President Zedillo.
Muy buenas noches. Primero que nada, first of all, I want to thank the Honorable Senator for joining this very special event of the Inter-American Dialogue. At this peculiar moment in history, it is very reassuring to listen an enlightened friend of Latin America like you, Senator. So for us, for this group, for the board of the Dialogue, it's really an honor to have you here and to listen the concepts that you have expressed, not only about your work in the Senate and in the House of Representatives for our region, but the very just but very true words about our honoree here tonight. So thank you, Mr. Senator. Let me turn on my machine. Otherwise, I cannot say what I have to say. Well, ladies and gentlemen, tonight I have happily accepted a job that not only constitutes a high honor for me, but it's also an easy task to perform. It is an easy undertaking for two reasons. One, because introducing one of the most remarkable and accomplished leaders in the history of modern Latin America is something that hardly requires any elaboration. I am confident that everybody in this distinguished audience knows of the significance of what our honoree has done for his beloved country and in many ways for our entire region. Two, because to perform this duty, I am being helped. First by the senator, amazing help, but also because my fellow members of the elders, led by a former United Nations Secretary General, have drafted a letter expressing our collective admiration for the personality that rightfully tonight is recognized by the Inter-American Dialogue. And that using my privilege as the Dialogue's co-chair, and with the permission of my dear friends Carla Hills and Michael Shifter, I will proceed to read. London, 16 November 2016. Dear President Santos, the elders warmly congratulate you on receiving the Leadership for the Americas Award from the Inter-American Dialogue in Washington, D.C. tonight. It has required vision and courage on all sides to reach not one, but two peace agreements to end the longest armed conflict in the Western Hemisphere. Despite setbacks, you have persevered in your efforts. In doing so, you have earned your place in history as the president who built on the will of the Colombian people and the efforts of many compatriots, including his predecessors, former Presidents Betancourt, Gaviria, Pastrana, and Uribe, to finally secure peace and end a half a century of conflict. You have shown great vision in putting victims and their rights at the center of this peace agreement and engaging with them during the negotiations. This is a precedent that we hope will serve as a model for peace processes in other parts of the world. The agreement also finds a balance between the often competing imperatives of peace and justice, and will enable previously neglected rural communities to benefit from development and government services in the future. We know that the difficult challenge of building peace on the ground lies ahead once the revised agreement with the FARC is signed and ratified, as we are confident it will be. Our faith in the outcome is rooted in the knowledge that the Colombian political leaders and people possess deep civic maturity and recognize the historic opportunity that you have helped open up. The Elders is an organization founded by Nelson Mandela, who we believe would be profoundly pleased by the exemplary Colombian peace process. The Elders include a number of former presidents from the Americas: Jimmy Carter, USA, Fernando Enrique Cardoso, Brazil, Ricardo Lagos, Chile, and Ernesto Zedillo, Mexico. In addition, they can count 4 Nobel Peace Prizes laureates among current and emeritus members: Kofi Annan, Marty Atizahari, Jimmy Carter, and Desmond Tutu. All stand united in applauding the Nobel Prize Committee's decision this year to honor you, and through you, all those who have worked tirelessly for the same objective. As you and the people of your great country go forward together, you should know that you can count on the Elders, as you have counted with the Inter-American Dialogue, to be by your side and to assist in any way that might be useful in ensuring that real peace finally prevails throughout Colombia. On behalf of my fellow Elders, I wish to convey to you our highest appreciation and esteem. Kofi Annan, Chair, the Elders. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Inter-American Dialogue, it is my honor to present the leadership for the Americas Award to President Juan Manuel Santos.
Good evening. As Enrique Garcia just said, Colombians are used to recognizing a very long list of people invited to any event. I had a very long list here, but I'm going to simply say, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy. I'm very happy. Thank you very much, Senator Blunt, for your very kind words, and President Zedillo, thank you very much, and for this very touching message from the Elders. It's a great encouragement. I really appreciate that you took the time to come here and make this introduction. I really am very happy, and congratulations, Senator Blunt, on your re-election. You have been a great friend of Colombia and Latin America. We are very happy that you were re-elected. I want to also recognize my fellow honorees, of course, my good friend Enrique Garcia. We met for the first time when I was just starting my public service 26 years ago, and he started his position at the CAF, and we've been good friends since then, working together in good times and difficult times, and I'm very honored to be here with you. Mr. Ludwig Willich, I hear that Colombia is a country where BMWs are selling at a faster rate than any country in Latin America. I'm very proud of that. And thank you for your presence there. And Dr. Vanessa van der Linden, also congratulations. We have also a problem with the Zika. After Brazil, the number 2 countries, you're most welcome to come to Colombia anytime you want. Thank you, Peter, Michael, I'm sorry, and thank you, Carla Hills. I think Peter Hakim is here. I wanted to also say hello to him. And Abe Lowenthal. I was drafted in 1990 to become a member of the Inter-American Dialogue by Abe, and it was a great decision that I accepted his invitation. And I say I'm very happy to be here because Michael has been trying to get me for the past 5 years. I couldn't make it. I could make it today. But I'm also very happy because last night, the basketball team of the University of Kansas, where I went as an undergraduate, beat Duke University, #1 in the nation. Well, the Jayhawks have been part of my life. You never forget where you were educated. And now that, talking about my education, I will tell you an anecdote in a very bipartisan spirit that the Dialogue has. When I was elected president, President Obama called me to congratulate me. I didn't know him. He was very gracious, very kind, and that year, the Jayhawks, the University of Kansas, was #1 in the nation and had lost a game a few days before. And so President Obama sort of broke the ice and said, President Santos, next time the Jayhawks are going to lose, please let me know because I bet on them and I lost some money. And I said, well, a joke should be responded with a joke. And I said, Mr. President, now that you are talking about my education, do you know what the Republicans say about my education? And he was surprised. No, what do they say about your education? The Republicans say I was educated in Kansas and corrupted in Harvard. This is the spirit of bipartisanship that the Dialogue has. It is a privilege to be here tonight with you and to accept this award. The Inter-American Dialogue has been very close to my heart and my public career. 26 years I've been in a very close relationship with Dialogue. I've been the board's vice chair. And the Dialogue has had a very strong influence on some of the major and positive trends that Colombia and the hemisphere has had in the last decades. As Tom Shannon, which I forgot to mention as another honoree, said, the progress of Latin America in the last decades has been very, very significant. The figures are there. Senator, you come from a state where they call show me. The figures are there. The progress in fighting poverty, the progress in the rule of law, with some exceptions, and what we have achieved are very compatible with what the Dialogue has always defended. Economic growth and integration, democracy and the rule of law, and social equality. We have a long way to go still, but I think we have made a lot of progress. and the dialogue has always been present, pushing for those principles and those values. And we can never forget the influential report that the dialogue did, for example, to start Plan Colombia. It was very important, and Plan Colombia for my country was a tipping point that started the progress that we have made since it was launched in the year 2000. It has been a plan, probably the most successful foreign policy bipartisan initiative that the U.S. has launched in the recent past, and we are very grateful for this bipartisan support that we have had from both the Democrats and the Republicans. And I recall a number of occasions when the dialogue gave us, the Colombians, and gave me personally a platform to sell what we were doing. When I was Minister of Trade, when I was Minister of Finance, when I was Minister of Defense, and also as President. And Senator Blunt was talking about the peace process, and President Zedillo, in his remarks, said how important this has been not only for Colombia, but for the whole region. Let me very shortly just tell you what is happening in the very recent past. As you know, on the 2nd of October, I put the agreement that we had signed with the FARC after 6 years of negotiations to a vote. I was not obliged to do that. The president of Colombia has the power to sign peace treaties by constitution and present them to Congress. But I thought it was the correct thing to do. I learned my lesson. The plebiscites, you never know how they, some kind of votes that you never know how they end. But that day, it was a Sunday, I will never forget. I was shocked. I never imagined that we were going to lose by a very tiny margin, 0.4%, less than 0.5%. But we lost. The yes vote lost to a no vote. And I saw the country split in half. And I said, my God, this could be a blessing in disguise. What if the yes vote had won with a small margin? The country would be in flames. So what I did was, let's try to find an opportunity here for the country to unite. Everybody had said they wanted peace. Who can be against peace? So why don't we try to establish a national dialogue? And immediately, I recognized the results an hour later and invited the people who had promoted the no vote to a dialogue. And we started the day after. And since then, we have been working on how to incorporate the worries, the preoccupations, the suggestions that the people who voted no had with the agreement that we had signed with the FARC on the 26th of September. It's been a very constructive, a very positive exercise. I personally have had more than 40 meetings with different promoters of the no, my negotiators, my ministers. It's been very intensive work with complete disposition to take into account every single worry that could be introduced in the agreement to have a new and better agreement. Simultaneously, we were negotiating with the FARC. We told them the plebiscite was lost. You must understand this, and you must be open. And they have been very open. And so we negotiated like in two chessboards, with the no people in Bogota and with the FARC in Havana. And we made progress, and we closed a new agreement, a new deal, last Saturday. Much better agreement. We introduced substantive changes, and we think it's a much better agreement that incorporates a very large percentage of what the no people have told us and have said publicly that they were worried about or they objected. So I truly think that we now have a much wider agreement with much wider support, a better agreement, and we can go forward. And this is an exercise that has been a very important exercise for Colombia because I have tried to put to one side our polarization. Polarization in any country, in any democracy, as we're seeing around the world, in a way simply impedes the countries to take decisions, to make progress. So I want to avoid that with Colombia. And that's why I thought that starting this dialogue would be the best way forward. And fortunately, we found a solution. I sincerely hope that we will get a very, very large majority of Colombians, and I think they have already started to express their support for this new agreement. The church, for example, who was impartial in the first agreement, has now come out very strongly say, we support that agreement. The Christian evangelist pastors, who were a very determinant factor in the no vote for reasons different from the agreement itself, but they were very strong in the no vote. Now the great majority have come out and said, we are completely satisfied. The retired officers from our Navy, our Army, our Air Force, who were very reluctant and said publicly that they would vote no, have come out and said, this agreement we support. Businessmen who were also a bit worried about the agreement that we signed on the 26th of September are now coming out and say, this agreement we will vote. And I hope that other sectors of the no vote will also come in and join the bandwagon and start to implement this agreement as soon as possible. The ceasefire that we have declared is a fragile ceasefire. It has been very, very effective. Since we signed the ceasefire, we have not had one single incident, not one person killed, not one person hurt, no attacks, and people are starting to experience something that Colombia has never experienced in 52 years, peace. And I am determined to maintain this peace and to get this agreement through Congress and to get this agreement implemented as soon as possible. And the support that I have received from the Inter-American Dialogue has been a great support through these 6 years of very difficult negotiations. People never thought that this would be possible. When I started, I gave the first step in this process. People said, why are you doing this? You were a very successful Minister of Defense. You were very effective in what you did. Why do you want to embark in this peace process? And I said, because we cannot continue living in a war that has really destroyed part of our moral fabric of the Colombian society. And I embarked in this very difficult process that I can tell you it's much easier to make war than to make peace. But making peace is the correct thing. And so I am more than determined to comply with what I was elected for. The Colombian people elected me in my re-election to make peace, and I will give my successor a country in peace. And simultaneously, some people say, oh, but you have only concentrated in peace, in the peace negotiations. That is not true. Peace is not simply to have your guns silenced. Peace must be social equity, progress, employment, housing, and Colombia in the last 5-6 years have made tremendous progress. We have reduced poverty by more than 12%, more than 4.5 million Colombians were taken out of poverty. We reduced extreme poverty in half. We have constructed more than 1.2 million houses. This is, in Colombian terms, an extremely large figure. We are leaders in the region in economic growth. We have integrated with other countries in the Pacific Alliance. And I can go on. In education, we made education free for every single Colombian in public schools from kindergarten to 11th grade. We have universal coverage of our health system. So we are building peace. At the same time, we were negotiating with the FARC. And I hope that this will come together and we will have a much better Colombia for the future. And the role of the dialogue has been very important. And I have simply followed what the dialogue is all about. Instead of killing each other, let's dialogue. Let's start a dialogue, and I think this is a great example of a case where people thought it was not possible, and it was possible through perseverance. Thank you very much.